The secret sauce to me is I was very fortunate in my career to have a couple people who I'd consider to be my mentors. And some of my takeaways from them as I was a manager that was growing and looking to take on more responsibility, one that I would probably cite first and foremost is don't make excuses, don't try and pass on blame, just find solutions.
This is Hospitality 1-to-1, conversations on the industry with your host, Chris Bennis.
Happy holidays from the Hospitality 1-to-1 podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also check us out on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/hospitality 1-to-1. We are on Twitter at hospitality 1-to-1. We also post video versions of our podcast on YouTube. Just search for Hospitality 1-to-1. And of course, you can find us on our website, which is www.hospitality1to1.com. We want to hear from you. Is there someone who you think we should be talking to? Let us know. You can email me at chris@hospitality1to1.com. Today we are proud to talk to Lowell Beebe Center, a general manager who has worked in major markets such as New York City as well as resorts in New England. He has been a lifetime hotelier that has built teams from the ground up as well as grooming numerous assistants and employees to take on management roles. Lowell is a true service-driven executive, and he preaches that into all areas of his hotels, leading to low turnover and employees that want to not only work in the industry, but also want to grow in their own careers. He is a leader who produces leaders. And now, Lowell Beebe Center. Lowell, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
I appreciate you taking the time out of a very, very hectic schedule. So your background is quite varied, but I think the first question comes to mind before we kind of go into anything else about your career. What made you get into the hospitality industry?
Well, it's a great question because originally I had no idea I was going to be in this industry, Chris. I was a history major in college, and I was primarily a history major. I was taking courses with professors that I enjoyed versus thinking more short term than what it was going to do for me long term. And when I got out of school, I had to, decide what I was going to do. My summer jobs, I had always worked in hotels and resorts and inns, mostly up on the coast of Maine, the Penobscot Bay area. And I recalled how much I enjoyed the environment in the hospitality industry and the varied positions and all sorts of, different roles. So I decided I wanted to go that direction, and then I also wanted a company that would hire me as a manager and train me. And so my first job, I went to work for McDonald's Corporation. I spent 2.5 years with the McDonald's Corporation, working my way up through their management ranks, and feel very strongly that my time with McDonald's is what contributed to my the foundation of my leadership style, one that focuses very much on hands-on management, focus on an employee motivation and satisfaction, and focus on service and customer experience. But I also decided I didn't want to do hamburgers my whole life, and I got into freestanding restaurants where I applied a lot of the same leadership styles and growth and learning. And ultimately, within a couple of years, I had an opportunity to be a restaurant manager in a brand new hotel that was opening in southern New Hampshire. And that was when I really got into the hotel environment, where I saw, just a lot of opportunity and what I, considered even back then as, this is what I want to do, for my career. And that grew from that point on. It's been about 30 years. Primarily with 3 companies, 14 years with one company, 8 years with a company, and now just going on about 6 years with another company. So it's that's what kind of brought me to where I am now.
That's kind of a unique attribute nowadays to have in a career span only 3 or 4 companies. I mean, most people now are looking at about a 2 to 3 year average. So that's quite impressive that you had the longevity with all 3 employers.
Well, even more, satisfying to me was the company that originally brought me into New York City, which I enjoyed them and appreciated them very much. But then I did get lured away by a couple other groups and did some projects. And the company that originally brought me into New York City reached out to me and asked me to come back to take on this very interesting project that I'm currently working on.
So you've been in the New York City market for some time. How does the turnover for the market compare to the country rate of near 70%?
Well, I think you're going to find it's very similar, but there's I think in a market like New York City, the dynamics are more varied. Everything first and foremost, the industry is for a fair amount of the positions is somewhat of a transient industry. People may be using it as something during school, full-time work during school, part-time work during the summer, a supplemental job to their primary job. I think that's a contributing factor. And then just the dynamics of New York City. When I first got into the city, there were about 86,000 hotel rooms in Manhattan. Now there's 110,000 hotel rooms. And within 3 years, they're expecting it to be about 120,000 or more hotel rooms. And that growth that's a growth in jobs, and people can be, particularly in such a concise market, people can be lured away, or kind of the grass is greener on the other side philosophy, where people are going to jump ship and look for different opportunities. Those are some of the variables, but the overall, I think the overall main focus when you talk about turnover is what I would consider. There are two types of turnover. There's good turnover, where someone's moving on for a logical reason, either for going into a different career, or there's a bona fide better opportunity. And then there's bad turnover, which is quite simply, people are leaving because they're dissatisfied with their work environment or the people they work with, or something like that. I think proportionately, that piece of the discussion is the same in New York City as it will be in other parts of the country. Just again, it's a bigger pool of employees and a bigger market, but I don't see anything that my perspective that makes the turnover opportunity necessarily any more challenging in New York City.
Now, given the fact that turnover does occur nationwide, and this can be applied anywhere you look at it, what steps can a hotel manager take? I mean, everyone has a turnover issue at some point. You can't negate all turnover. But what can you do to potentially reduce the turnover in your hotel?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one of the companies that I spent about 14 years with. At one point, I was on a task force within the company to look at turnover and kind of examine, data and information that we had within the company, because they recognize the cost and the challenge that turnover, or what I call bad turnover, creates. And what we found that it all boils down to, and again, this isn't, we didn't discover, anything wild with this, and I think it makes a lot of sense when you discuss it, but what we discovered is it really boils down to what we refer to as the introductory period. The introductory period begins when you first decide you need to hire someone. The introductory period is, how you, when you post for a position or when you're interviewing a position, know exactly what sort of, what the job responsibilities are and the specifics of the job, so you can pass those on. I believe the introductory period it covers things as simple as when you're scheduling an interview. Let the front desk staff know that, hey, you're expecting, Bob Smith in today. He's coming in to interview with us. Have yourself scheduled so you can, and the appropriate managers can have the appropriate time to sit and conduct the interview. Just make things work well. Too often, we saw, and we went through a lot of exit interviews when we were gathering our data. But you see people, they show up, no one really knows they're coming. It's a harried interview, or the people that were supposed to spend time with them really don't. Their first day at work, no one really knows who's coming. No one knows what they're supposed to do. What's their training checklist. They get thrown into a room with a bunch of paperwork and an orientation video, and that's their welcome. So we found in discussing that that whole, even before you're hired and right up to your first day, it can be a turnoff. People will disassociate, and you're not going to have the kind of the buy-in to the job that you would want. And then the introductory period we calculated really is right up through the first 90 days. Again, is the job expectation clear? Is it training provided? Is a uniform provided? Is there a name tag? Is there a good, proper hotel orientation? And are we touching back with the employees? And quite honestly, this is at all levels, whether right across the board, the leadership levels, the senior line staff, and the entry level positions. You want people that want to be there and feel valued and have the information and feel comfortable. And that's, again, I don't think I've spoken about anything that isn't common sense, but that's essentially what we found and what I've always tried to incorporate. It's all about getting the people, kind of buying in right out of the gate and feeling comfortable and feeling secure, and then that the payoff in that is then you have a person that's more of a participative relationship, an employee that is going to start to excel, versus the person that you just throw into the sink or swim mode, which typically won't work in the long run.
So it's a combination of both continuous feedback between department heads as well as the candidates, so they know where they stand in the process, and then once they are brought on board, making them from the get-go feel like a valued employee. Exactly. Now, what is it like to build a team in one of the world's busiest and fastest moving cities?
It's New York City is it's just an exciting place to work. I've been here about 8 years, and sometimes I say to myself, I'm not sure if I could work anyplace else, because it is such a fast-paced environment. You kind of get used to it. And I recall a lot of my times in some of the suburban markets that I've been in, where the days were much more predictable versus New York City, where again it truly is a 24-hour operation. My time in New York City, I've had the unique opportunity to open. I've done 6 hotel openings so far in New York City, and so I am building a team from scratch in every instance. One additional factor is, again, being in this kind of concise market. In every opening I've had the opportunity to bring on, a few to several people that I've worked with on previous projects, where it's a good opportunity for them to, move into another role, or it's a growth opportunity, and it's a great opportunity for me, because I take a person where we have that relationship and that trust and that similar core style where we understand each other. The other aspect, when you're the bulk of the staff, you start with all the leadership positions, and I found, similar to what I was describing in the introductory period of a traditional hiring process, and how to invest in that introductory period for the long-term benefit. It's the same thing with a new build project, where you're looking for leadership that has, kind of understands your set of beliefs from a leadership style, mostly involving basically the golden rule as far as how to treat people, because everyone's going to have their different leadership styles, but at the end of the day, you want people that are going to embrace the core parts of your style, and that's what I'd work on. The other thing I was very clear on, opening a hotel and building a team from scratch is a very unique. It's not like walking into a building that's existing. When you open a hotel, the team is on board, depending on the position, anywhere from 6 to 8 months prior to opening. So the leadership roles, and then the line staff, when they start coming on board, you have to be very specific and tell them exactly what to expect. And I've coined a phrase where I tell people at different levels and at different times when they're coming on board, here's your position and here's what you're going to be doing when the hotel's up and running. But for the next 2 months, you're really not going to be doing any of that. Here's what you're going to be doing, and very specific as relates to loading into the hotel, to the setting up SOPs for your department, to carrying boxes of pillows and whatever else is going on. So I've learned through the time that I've been doing a lot of openings that again, similar when we were talking about the introductory period, just letting people know exactly what to expect with their role. The other tremendous benefit to being in pre-opening projects is you never have a better time to create the level of ownership and passion, because again, we're all in the trenches together. We're all lugging those boxes of pillows. We're all seeing the first room set up. We're all doing the brand checklist, overnight, the night before the brand shows up to give you the official kickoff. We're all kind of, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Now, you had obviously on top of you talked about your New York City experience, your opening experience. Let's kind of talk, if you will, about that unique subset of being New York City experience. So we've worked with companies all across the country, and there are some areas that are very particular, must have New York City, must have LA experience, must have this. To you, in your opinion, if you will, why do you feel that having New York City experience is so important? And I guess as a follow-up to that, being honest, is it totally necessary? If a candidate can do the job, would they still fit in if they didn't have that experience?
And again, another great question, and I can relate directly because I never even thought about coming to New York City because I had advanced my career to being a general manager, being a regional person, and I was never even thinking of coming to New York City. And quite honestly, I personally had the perception that I don't have New York City experience, so no one's gonna be interested in me. And so I was very satisfied doing what I was doing in the secondary markets with the company that I was with. And then I was recruited by the company that brought me into New York City based on, again, it's a small world in our industry, and it's even smaller in New York City. But some people that I'd worked with were working with this company, and then I had very strong brand experience, and then I at that point I had already really kind of accomplished a lot with opening experience. And so the group that reached out to me, they weren't banking on New York City experience. They wanted the person that was the right cultural fit from a leadership standpoint, and the person that had that opening and brand experience. And so as I've been in the city for about 8 years now, I will say that the operations roles, I think if you're a good operations person in the suburbs or in a secondary market, you certainly can be a good operations person in New York City. I've heard companies talk about how they don't want people that have these preset styles and kind of New York City leadership styles. They want someone a little newer. Or someone with a fresh set of eyes. I would concede that, when you get into some of the sales positions, having New York City is a very seasonal market. It's a very dynamic market. I would see that, there'd be an advantage to having a New York City experience from a sales standpoint. But again, not the end all. So I don't necessarily believe you have to have the experience. I just think there's at the end of the day, I think an owner is going to, or a person doing the hiring, that's going to be something that they'll weigh in on if the person has New York City experience. If all the other boxes are ticked and they have New York City experience, that's going to help them. But I don't think it's more and more people are coming to the city, partly because of the development and the growth of the supply. But I think the perception is changing, and those are my kind of the points that I would comment on.
And now let's walk ahead, if we will. So you found the right candidate. They're now brought on board. If the hotel was in a pre-opening, now it's open. And so now you have a fully open and run property. When it comes to working with the staff itself, your employees, as a GM or anyone on the executive team for that matter, how important is it for you to meet and to get to know each employee, even if you didn't personally hire them?
I think it's very important. And again, this would be one of the items that other people might disagree on. And then if you get into the whole discussion of scale and size of hotel. But in my career, I've managed 400-room hotels, and I've managed 100-room hotels and everything in between. And it's been a personal belief of mine that at some point in time, I will meet every employee before they're formally hired. Again, just to reinforce, because I'm going to be that hands-on leader throughout a person's time with us, and so I just want to kind of set that, set that tone from the very beginning. And my time with this staff, it might be a little bit job specific, but it's more for kind of getting a feel and setting the platform for, what our expectations are overall. And again, that we want that participative relationship and that employee that wants to be there and wants to grow. And again, just to reinforce that introductory period, I think it validates, what we're doing. And it's also, I've always spoken to people that, when you're hiring someone, it's a two-way street. We want them to be comfortable with us, just as we want all the key touch points to be comfortable with that hire. Now, the thing that I would concede, if you're in a 2,000-room hotel, and there's all sorts of dynamics, that could be introduced, but, is that feasible in a 2,000-room hotel? Probably a little bit more challenging. But that's what I feel very, very strongly about, and how I've conducted myself as it comes to hiring in my experience.
So it's in your opinion that hands-on personal touch, if you will, is invaluable?
Yes, now, very, very much so.
Makes perfect sense. Now, obviously, through your experience, you've been able to groom and train numerous number twos to take over properties. What is your secret, or I guess, is there a secret sauce, if you will, that you can share for anyone else who would like to do the same?
That's probably one of the most satisfying parts of my job, is when I see people either internally while I'm there or down the road, see people grow and see people that maybe they came on board as a front office manager in one project, and then a couple years down the road they're a general manager with another project, whether it's with the same group or a different group. And again, the secret sauce to me is I was very fortunate in my career to have a couple people who I'd consider to be my mentors, and some of my takeaways from them as I was a manager that was growing and looking to take on more responsibility. One that I would probably cite first and foremost is don't make excuses. Don't try and pass on blame. Just find solutions. Accept it. A lot of times, you'll find people that will just, something happens and everyone will start pointing fingers and say, well, if so-and-so didn't do this or this department didn't do that, then this wouldn't have happened. But to me, it's very refreshing to find the person that will just, stop the finger point and say, hey, this is what happened. Here's what we learned. Here's what we're going to do going forward, or I'm going to look in and I'm going to do this. So I think one of the first traits of a future leader is someone that's willing to, take responsibility and find solutions, not point fingers and blame. Something else I would tell someone that has aspirations to grow in the industry is always do more than is expected. When you talk to line level or supervisory roles, it's what I refer to. Don't be a clock watcher. On one hand, we do have to control labor, and you can't just have carte blanche, stay as long as you want. But don't be that person who's you're done with your work an hour before your scheduled shift is ended. Be that person that just is doing something extra than expected. Get involved and ask, put your hand up. A lot of time in my experience, my background, I've sat down with people and they say they want to learn, or it's an annual review, and what else can I do? And we talked about things being a two-way street as related to another conversation, but I tell people also that growth and learning is a two-way street also, and in that, look at something that is interesting to you and put your hand up, or just, hey, can you show me how you do that, or what, can you look at a STAR report with me and explain to me, what are our goals and how are we doing? So I encourage people to put their hand up, and again, that participative part of the growth and opportunity. And then I also tell people that you always got to be on your game. You can't be like at the front desk, really nice to the customers, and then polite and professional and pleasant, and then go behind the front desk and just start yucking it up. And not that you said that you can't have that fun aspect. I'm a big believer in having fun, but you got to be a consistent leader. You've got to, here's kind of the core leadership style, and people, you want people to see that, whether you're just in the morning having a cup of coffee in the break room, or whether you're front and center in the middle of a big check-in, and so be a consistent leader, so people understand and can see that. And it's been interesting. Another, not to go on too far on a tangent, but my youngest son is in the hospitality industry, and I've had the chance to talk with him about some things, and been very proud of how he's evolved, and perhaps by having the ability for me to share some of these insights and instinctive traits with him. So that's been a very rewarding experience as well.
That's a great transition point, because you talking about your son being in the industry and you being able to impart some wisdom. I know you're quite humble, so you won't brag about it, but I will say that you've been described as one of the best service-driven GMs or executives. So I guess putting some skin on that, if you will, how do you take that knowledge and how do you, if you will, transfer that to your team?
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and I do think humility is an important personal trait, no matter what you do. There would be some people that would disagree with that, and but it's for me, it translates into being there when your staff needs you, and that's, I mean, again, I've had pleasure of working with so many great people in the industry through my career. But something as simple as I'm a habitual early riser, and I think that comes from my background in food and beverage, and then in some of the select service projects I've done, where as a GM you're always Plan B, and so I adopted a philosophy of if you start off ahead, you end up ahead all day. If you come in and waltz in at 9 o'clock, you're just going to be firefighting for the rest of the day. So I've always arrived at the property early. I always make a point to get to know and spend time with the overnight staff, whether it's in a 400-room hotel or it's in a 100-room hotel, because that's a very unique role, and there's a key activity happening during that period. And then I've always, whether it's weekends or nights or in the middle of a crazy period, I've been again, just that person that is there to support and to help and to recognize when people are doing wonderful things. I have a style where I don't profess to be an expert at everything, and I like to recognize people that are experts so they can benefit the group. I think it just involves, that consistent being a resource, being a support, and that consistent style that people can count on. And I would, again, when one of the examples, a person that I worked with mentioned this to me years ago, but there was a time we had a hotel opening, and normal stuff that happens after you open. In this instance, the fire alarm just was going off repeatedly, like every 30 minutes over the course of the night. And so that morning, after working through it all, I kind of already made the decision. I was just, I wasn't going to unleash the fury of, 400 rooms worth of guests on the front desk staff. I just positioned myself front and center in the lobby. And I met the guests and explained to them what had happened and apologized. And we had taken some steps. We had opened the restaurants for free that morning, just as an offering. But I, took responsibility and just took that. And I had an employee that came up to me later, and they said that they had never seen a manager, never mind a general manager, typically. Sometimes they get the perception that those positions, that role is just sitting in their office, going over reports and, generating to-do lists. And so it was. I think that's a good summary of how I feel I get the most out of the team by being there when they need you there.
Great advice, Lowell. Now, I guess one final question before we let you go here. So, for the new college graduate, the fresh hospitality face, or even someone who's, say, just a few years in their career, what can you share with them to help them grow and continue the career growth in their career? In other words, what advice can you give them to give them the best chance to begin to progress in the industry?
Well, the first and foremost, I touched on it before, but I would highly recommend that they put their hand up, that they invest in themselves by finding a mentor, by asking about opportunities, by being a participative member of the team, by getting involved in different committees, doing the extra, doing the more than is expected. But by finding a company, and again, we've alluded to the notion that we were in an industry, kind of a transient workforce industry, and there are many factors to that. But there are a lot of great companies out there that can and will put together a long-term succession plan, and they have projects in the pipeline, and they have growth opportunities. So the most important thing, I think it goes back to, just don't just sit back and be disappointed if nothing's happened. Be part of making things happen and I always say this: right time, right place, right way. Don't approach the general manager in the middle of a sprinkler discharge on a Saturday night full house on New Year's Eve. Again, talk. Put your hand up and ask questions and offer and bring something to the table as well. Again, the whole two-way street thing. is about what you're bringing to the party and what you're bringing to the table, and that's by how you conduct yourself with your enthusiasm, your spirit to serve, and your core hospitality beliefs. But don't expect. I would say at the end, I say don't expect something to just be handed to you. What are you going to do to earn it? And some of the things we talked about are some of the ways that I think you can start to open doors to earn opportunities for growth.
Great advice, great information, Lowell. I sincerely appreciate you taking time to talk to us. And I know you've got quite a busy day ahead of you. Thank you so very much. Before we go, how can people get a hold of you?
I can be. I do have a LinkedIn presence where I try and continue to foster networking and sharing ideas. And that's you can look me up on LinkedIn at under Lowell Beebe Center. And then I'd be happy to have anyone that wanted to email me with any networking opportunities or questions or opportunities to share ideas. My work email is lowell@nychotelteam.com.
That's great. We're going to actually put a link both to Lowell's LinkedIn profile as well as his email address up on hospitality1to1.com. Again, Lowell, thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Chris, thank you very much, and I've enjoyed it.
Have a great day.
You too. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Hospitality 1-to-1 podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also check us out on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Hospitality 1-to-1. We're on Twitter at Hospitality 1-to-1. We also post video versions of our podcast on YouTube. Just search for Hospitality 1-to-1. And of course, you can find us on our website, which is www.hospitality1to1.com.